Hi, my name's Danica. My father once threw burning coffee in my face because I wouldn't hand over my credit card for my brother's latest $7,000 screw-up. He told me to give the card or get out. What they didn't say out loud, but made sure I understood, was that I was only family as long as I stayed useful. They erased my name from the will, told the church I was unstable, used my identity to file false government claims. Now they act surprised. I'm not coming home for dinner? How do you heal when the people who broke you say you're the one tearing the family apart? Would you stay quiet, or would you burn the silence they built around you? I left my father's house with third-degree burns and no apology, just a line of people pretending nothing happened. The morning had started quiet, like so many others. I was in the kitchen by 7:10, slicing bananas into a chipped ceramic bowl while the kettle hissed behind me. Des Moines had one of those sunlit winter mornings where the frost makes the windows glow, but inside the house, it was still gray and cold. That's how it always felt in Royce's kitchen, like walking into a room where someone had just been yelled at. I cracked the eggs into a bowl, whisked them, toasted the bread. He liked it with margarine, not butter. "Too fancy," he said. Royce didn't come in until almost 7:30. He shuffled, slippers dragging like weights, his bathrobe loosely tied, the same one he'd worn since before Mom passed. "Smells like burnt guilt," he muttered, sitting at the head of the table. I ignored it. That was my role, the peacemaker, the fixer, the daughter who never made a scene. The doorbell rang. Two of his church friends stepped in, Frank and Diane, both smiling like they were on a campaign trail, holding a tray of muffins. I greeted them, poured coffee, and tried to stay invisible. That's when Chet walked in. My brother. Same smug face, same slouched walk, no job, no real plan, just another hustle coming. "Morning, Dee," he said, like we were on good terms. "I've got a thing I want to run by you." I should have known. He sat down across from me, took a sip of coffee, and leaned back. "So this app developer I know says if I front him $7,000, we can get in early. Big return." Royce nodded before I could speak. "Sounds like opportunity." I blinked. "You want me to give Chet $7,000? "Loan," Chet said quickly. "Just temporary. You're doing well, right?" Frank and Diane watched, silent but present. "I'm not giving you that kind of money," I said, calm. Royce set down his cup, too hard. "Why not?" "Because it's not wise," I said. "And frankly, it's not my responsibility." He stood. "This house runs because your brother still breathes. You just cost money." My stomach dropped. Diane shifted in her seat. Frank cleared his throat. "I pay the electric bill here," I reminded him. "And I covered your dental work last month." "You live here for free," he snapped. "Don't act like a saint. You were a burden the second you came out of your mother." I stood to leave. That's when it happened. Royce grabbed my coffee cup, my cup, and flung it at me. It hit my chest, splashed up into my neck and jaw, scorching skin. I screamed. The mug shattered. Silence followed. Not one person moved. The smell of burnt coffee filled the room, mixing with whatever was left of my dignity. Royce's voice, ice cold, broke the silence. "Give the card, or get out." I looked down. My blouse clung to my skin, coffee dripping from my elbow. My eyes scanned the room. Frank looked away. Diane stared at the muffins. I didn't cry. I grabbed my purse, keys, didn't bother with my coat. The air outside was frigid, but I felt nothing. The walk from the front door to my car felt like miles. A neighbor watched from their porch, didn't wave, didn't ask. I sat in the driver's seat, hand trembling on the wheel. My phone buzzed. A message from him. "Maybe now you'll learn your place." That broke me. Not the heat, not the silence. That text. I drove aimlessly for 20 minutes, ended up parked outside a cemetery. I wasn't even thinking about Mom. Maybe part of me was. My hands shook. I looked down at my burned skin. The pain was dull now, fading. What stayed was the echo of his voice. I used to think silence was strength, that not responding made me noble. But sitting there, alone, burnt and banished, I realized something darker. Silence had been my leash. I drove to a Walgreens, walked straight to the burn cream aisle. The cashier didn't ask. I'm sure she saw worse. Or maybe she didn't want to know. By the time I got back to my apartment, the one I rarely stayed in because I was always needed at Dad's, I felt hollow. I dropped my bag, turned off my phone, and sank onto the couch. A memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. I was 60. Family reunion. I brought the wrong kind of pie. Roy stood up in front of everyone and said, "What kind of idiot brings pecan when they know the family eats apple?" People laughed. I laughed too. But that night, I cried into my pillow, wishing I could vanish. It was always like that. It wasn't the coffee. It was never just the coffee. It was every slap disguised as sarcasm. Every cruel word shrugged off as tough love. This time, though, something had shifted. I wasn't 16 anymore. And this time, I was walking out. Not because he told me to, but because I finally believed I deserved better. I didn't go straight home after I left that house. I didn't have a real plan, just an ache deep inside my skin and a sick, hollow space under my ribs where something used to live. Maybe respect, maybe trust. I kept driving until the streets looked unfamiliar, until the noise of the world outside was louder than the silence inside me. That's how I ended up parked on the side of a narrow road by the cemetery. I hadn't planned to come here. My hands didn't steer with intention. They just followed memory. Mom's grave was a small rectangle with a plain stone, the kind she always said was just enough. I stepped out of the car, the cold air rushing to meet the raw skin on my collarbone. The burn had started to blister, small bubbles forming like unspoken words. I stood in front of her stone, not expecting comfort. "You still protecting him?" I asked, not bothering to whisper. The wind moved the grass. The air didn't respond. I thought about turning around, but my feet held me there, like roots I didn't ask for. If she could see what he did, if she saw the way Chet sat there smirking while I got scalded, would she speak up? Or would she say what she always said? "He didn't mean it, honey. He's just tired. That's how men are." I didn't cry. I didn't feel permission to cry anymore. Back in the car, I scrolled through my contacts. My thumb hovered over Willa's name. I didn't press it. A message lit up instead. From her. "You okay?" I heard something happened. I stared at it. Typed, deleted, typed again, left it. I was too ashamed to admit how far I had let things go. How many times I'd told myself it's just family. How I'd justified giving them control. Instead of replying, I drove to the bank. It wasn't even noon yet, but it felt like another lifetime had passed since breakfast. I walked in and asked to speak with a manager. The woman behind the desk, young, polite, unaware, led me to a chair and clicked through her screen while I explained that I wanted to freeze access on all joint family accounts. She smiled politely. "I can help with that. Can I also verify your access on the personal savings account ending in 3790? "That one's just under me," I said. "Opened it before my mother passed." Her smile faltered slightly. She tapped a few more keys. "Actually, it was converted to managed co-ownership about 6 months ago. It now shows Royce Leclerc as primary controller." My heart stilled. "That's not possible." She rotated the screen. My name was still there, but lower beneath his, the word secondary. A legal placeholder. "You signed the co-management agreement on June 22nd. My mouth went dry. That was the week after my hip surgery. "I was on pain medication that week," I said slowly. "I never agreed to anything." She cleared her throat. "It's electronically signed. I can request the original signature log if you'd like." "Yes," I said. "I would like that." I walked out of the bank with a dull, slow rage creeping through me. The memory came sharp. Me on the recliner, half-conscious, wrapped in ice packs and blankets. Royce standing over me, holding a pen. "Just sign, sweetheart. This covers your prescriptions. I'll take care of the rest." I did what I was trained to do, what he raised me to do. I signed without question. I had been raised in a family where compliance was confused for love. Back at the rental, small, beige, quiet, I unlocked the door and sank into the chair by the window. The walls were still bare. I hadn't planned to stay long. I thought I'd be back at Dad's soon. I reached into the drawer of the small side table. My mother's jewelry box sat inside, dusty and ignored. I hadn't opened it in months. Tucked beneath the necklace she wore on Sundays was a folded piece of paper, yellowed edges, creased from being handled too many times. It was her handwriting. The date at the top, April 18th, 2 years before she died. I leave the house to Danica Faye, because she always gave without asking. My eyes blurred. Not from tears, but from something worse, hope. I called the county probate office, asked about the most recent will on file. The woman on the phone sounded tired but kind. Let me pull that up. Okay, we have a will filed by Mr. Royce LeClaire dated 7 months ago. Property to be split between himself and Chet LeClaire. No other parties listed. My name was gone. The couch groaned as I sank lower. I set the old will beside me. Had Mom known they'd do this? Or had she trusted them just like I had? Maybe she thought writing it down was enough. It wasn't. For the first time in days, I stopped moving. I let the stillness settle around me like dust. I didn't feel sadness anymore. I felt something colder, clearer. They weren't just taking my money. They were rewriting history. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I sat with a yellow notebook on my lap and started writing. Dates, banks, loan amounts. Times Royce had handled things for me. Times Chet had just borrowed my card. I listed the things I paid for in the house. New washer and dryer. Furnace repair. 3 months of groceries during Royce's surgery. Receipts. Memories. Everything I could remember. They want me to forget, I whispered. That's the only way they win. I flipped the page and started again. This time in bold ink. What they took. What I gave. What I have left. I didn't know what I'd do with it all. Not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about surviving. I was thinking about winning. After I left the probate office the next morning, I didn't go home. I wasn't sure if home still applied to anywhere I currently lived. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking lot for nearly half an hour, holding a coffee I didn't even sip. The irony wasn't lost on me. How a hot cup from the hands of a stranger could bring more comfort than the one flung at me from someone who used to tuck me in at night. I finally pulled out of the lot and stopped by the mailbox of the rental I shared. A pile of letters spilled into my lap, ads, a sympathy card from an old friend, and a white envelope without any return address. Inside, a formal debt collection notice. I scanned the page once, then again, then a third time, thinking maybe I was still doped up on trauma or hadn't had enough sleep to read properly. Account holder, Danica Faye. Outstanding balance, $14,073.63. Account opened, May 14th. I felt something twist in my stomach. That's not possible. I never opened any line of credit, not this year, not that amount. I didn't even apply for financing when I needed my hip surgery. The address linked to the loan wasn't mine. It was the house on Maple Ridge, Dad's house. The house I used to call home. I called the number on the letter. A chipper voice picked up on the other end. You've reached Midland Credit Recovery. How may I help you today? I gave her the file number. Read every digit slow enough to hear my own breath between each one. After some clicks, she came back with practiced indifference. Yes, this account was opened under your name and social security number, co-signed by a Royce LeClaire. That name familiar? Yes, he's my father. Okay. So, looks like you and Mr. LeClaire are jointly liable. Payments were missed for the last 4 months. This was originally a personal loan. I never applied for that loan, I said, voice flat. According to our files, both signatures are on the agreement. Can I get a copy? We can mail it or fax it if needed. Email it. When I hung up, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. It was like getting a diagnosis you'd already suspected, just finally having the scan confirm it. I went back to the rental, walked straight to the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and set the unopened sympathy card on the counter. I opened my laptop and waited for the document. 10 minutes later, it arrived. There it was, my full name, signature, and the date, June 18th. That was the week I was still on pain meds, barely walking without help. I remembered Dad sitting beside my recliner telling me to sign a few insurance forms to help with the bills. He had coached my hand through it like I was a toddler learning to write again. I hadn't read a single line. I zoomed in. My signature looked off. It was mine, but shaky, uneven. The kind of handwriting that doesn't come from someone in control of their body or their life. I texted Willa, "Need you to look at a document. It's bad." She replied 3 minutes later, "Forward it. I'll review at lunch." I stared at the screen, my name looped in digital ink, bound to a debt I didn't know existed. That night, I called my Aunt Brenda, Dad's older sister. She was always the one who sent Christmas cards with real stamps, the one who called on birthdays, even if it was just to leave a voicemail. When she answered, her voice was warm. "Hey, baby girl. I've been thinking about you." I cut straight through the pleasantries. Did my mom ever say anything about her will? About what she wanted for the house? There was a pause. "Why are you asking?" "Because the version I have says she left it to me. The official one says I'm not in it at all." Brenda sighed. "Danica, your mom loved you. You know that." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. "She told your dad she didn't want the house split, said she didn't want conflict between you and Chet." "She didn't want conflict, or she didn't want me to have it?" "I'm just telling you what I heard. Your mom said you weren't meant to carry that legacy, that you had your own life." I felt something go quiet in me. "So now you believe I shouldn't be in the will?" "I'm saying maybe she trusted Royce to make the right choice. That's what families do. Trust each other." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I hung up without warning. I closed my eyes and let the weight sit. They weren't just rewriting paperwork. They were rewriting memory. They'd been at it longer than I wanted to admit. Later that night, I pulled out old journals, cross-referenced medical records, travel receipts. I started noticing odd overlaps. There were bills paid with my card on dates I was out of town, online orders shipped to the house, not the rental. And I had a sinking feeling this wasn't just about the loan. This was a pattern, a system. I wasn't just the obedient daughter. I was their backup account. I wrote down everything: dates, bank accounts, repairs I paid for, groceries, medications, property tax. I pulled receipts from my inbox, forwarded them into a folder titled "Receipts They Forgot I Kept." It wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about getting clarity. I was tired of trying to prove I deserved love from people who only saw me as convenient. I said it out loud this time, just to hear the words bounce off the walls of my little rental. If I'm invisible, they won't see me coming. The next morning, I called Willa. "I'm not calling for comfort," I told her. "I'm calling to start the paper trail." She paused for a second, then said, "You ready to fight this, right?" "I'm done being polite." She chuckled, dark and low. "Then let's start the clock." And just like that, it began. Not a war with fists, but one with facts, with folders, files, and a voice I finally believed I had the right to use. They wanted me erased. But I wasn't done writing my name yet. The email had barely left my outbox when I pushed away from the table, shut the laptop, and stood in the quiet stillness of the rental kitchen. For a second, I let myself imagine what it must have felt like. Royce or Chet reading it. I didn't write it to scare them. I wrote it because I needed it documented. Like leaving a note on a locked door. "You can't come in anymore." That evening, the sun dropped low, slicing gold across the floorboards. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and the canvas tote I kept half-packed. There were still a few personal things I hadn't gotten out of the house, and I wasn't about to leave them behind. I had to see the place again, not as a daughter, but as someone walking back into enemy territory to reclaim what was rightfully hers. When I pulled into the driveway, Royce's truck was parked in its usual spot, but the living room light wasn't on and the porch was empty. For a moment, I hoped he wasn't home. Then I remembered that hoping around Royce never served me well. I stepped up, knocked once, and opened the door with my old key. He was in the kitchen, back turned to me, stirring something on the stove. Chili, maybe. He didn't look up. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said, voice casual. No hello, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. "I'm here to grab the last of my things. I won't stay long." "Fine. You do what you need to do." I didn't answer. I walked down the hallway, past the family photo wall. Half the frames were newer, updated. There was a group shot from last Easter. Royce, Chet, Jolene, even a neighbor or two. I wasn't in it. One of the frames that used to hold my graduation picture now held an award Chet got in high school. I could feel it deep in my chest, that strange ache. They were rehearsing life without me, replacing me one photo at a time. I stepped into the room that used to be mine. The air was different, drier, like no one had opened a window in weeks. The bookshelf was bare. The little wooden box I kept my birth certificate and passport in was missing. I opened the closet. A few old sweaters hung there, but the shoebox full of tax forms was gone. I checked the drawer under the bed where I used to keep backup bank statements. Empty. When I came back out, Royce was seated at the table with a bowl in front of him. "You looking for something?" "I think you know." He sipped. "You left a lot of junk behind. Might have tossed it." "Right. Because throwing away someone's social security documents is just housekeeping now." He didn't flinch, just kept eating. I turned to go, then stopped. "Where's Chet?" He looked up then. "Out, working on a project." My eyes narrowed. That wouldn't be a project involving my name again, would it? Royce's smile was thin. "You always thought the worst of us." I walked out. The next morning, I went to church. It had been my church too once. I'd volunteered every Thursday, led book drives, organized food deliveries. Even after Mom died, I kept showing up because I thought consistency meant something. The parking lot was full. I slipped inside quietly, took a seat in the back. It was strange to be in a place that once held my voice and now held only silence. Diane, one of the older women from the flower ministry, saw me in the hallway after service. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. Then she turned and walked past. I stood still. My stomach churned. Pastor Thomas saw me. His smile was warm, his handshake quick. "We missed you," he said, already turning towards someone else. "Glad you came." And just like that, he was gone. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the unease. Something was off. Something was being said behind closed doors. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation. That afternoon, Jolene texted me. Just one line. "Can't believe you said that about Aunt Irina." I frowned. My thumbs tapped fast. "What are you talking about?" She replied with screenshots. 3 fake messages, designed to look like mine, sent weeks ago, to Chet, to Royce, to some contact labeled Diane, Church. They said things like, "She never did anything for me. I was the one taking care of her." I should have been in that will, but she was too scared to admit who really mattered. She's dead, so who cares what she wanted? I stared at them, bile rising. The timestamps? All dated the week I was still in the ICU. I called Jolene. "I never wrote those. You know I didn't." There was a long pause. "I don't know, Danny," she said quietly. "They came from your number." "Do you believe I'd say that?" She didn't answer. I hung up. The rest of the week I tried calling a few people, my cousin in Cedar Rapids, my uncle in Omaha, a family friend I'd known since middle school. Out of 5 calls, 3 went to voicemail. The other 2 answered, but sounded like they were talking to a stranger. One of them said, "I love you, Danica, but maybe you should just let this go. It's tearing the family apart." I ended the call without a word. I called Willa that night, told her what happened, told her I had screenshots. "Forward everything," she said. "I'll get someone to look into metadata. Don't reply to anyone yet." Over the next 2 days, I started documenting every lie, every doctored message, every timestamp that didn't align. The more I wrote, the more I realized it wasn't about just proving they lied. It was about building a record for myself, to remind me I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. But what hit hardest wasn't the fake messages or the cold shoulders. It was the voicemail from Pastor Thomas 3 days later. "Hi, Danica. Hope you're well. We've decided to pause your volunteer involvement for a bit, just until things settle down. Blessings." It didn't matter how many Sundays I had shown up early, or how many meals I'd delivered. One rumor was enough to erase it all. That night, I cried. For the first time since the coffee burned my skin. Not because I missed them, but because it became painfully clear they weren't just pushing me out. They were writing over me. I didn't sleep much, but I wrote. And in the morning, I opened my laptop and typed one line in the subject line of a new email. Formal notice, defamation, and identity. Misuse. I attached the screenshots. I explained the fabrication, sent it to Chet, CC'd Royce, and I ended it with one sentence. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm giving you a chance to stop. Then I hit send, closed the laptop, and waited. Not for their reply, but for my silence to finally mean something. They tried to erase me legally, just like they did emotionally, but I came back with receipts. It had been 3 days since I sent the email, and I hadn't heard a word. No reply from Royce, no angry voicemail from Chet, not even a half-baked text from Jolene trying to smooth things over. The silence felt intentional, calculated, like a pause before the next strike. So when Royce called late Friday afternoon and said, "Why don't you stop by tomorrow? Let's talk this through, like adults," I knew better than to believe him. Still, I went. Not because I thought we'd find middle ground, but because I was tired of playing defense. I needed to see the battlefield for what it really was. Saturday morning, I left early. Willa offered to come with me, but I declined. There were things I needed to hear with my own ears, without someone stepping in to soften the blow. I pulled into the driveway around 9:30. The yard hadn't been raked, and the front porch light was still on. Old habits. That house always carried a certain stillness in the morning, the kind that made you feel like you weren't welcome to speak unless spoken to. The door creaked open before I knocked. Roy stood there, freshly shaven, wearing a pressed flannel like he was hosting a church picnic. "Danica," he said, all charm and calm. "Glad you made it." I didn't reply. Just stepped inside and let the smell of coffee and cheap cologne hit me. Jolene was in the kitchen, wiping down an already clean countertop. She glanced up and smiled like we were at a high school reunion, not the scene of a financial crime. "I was just saying to Uncle Royce," she chirped, "it's so nice that everyone's finally sitting down again." "Everyone?" I looked around. No Chet. "You two always this cheerful before breakfast?" I asked. Royce laughed. "Come on, kid, let's sit down. We've all been through a lot. No point in dragging this out longer than it needs to go." I followed him to the dining room table, 3 chairs, a thick envelope already resting on my place setting. "I wanted to show you this," he said, sliding it toward me. "Get the estate cleaned up once and for all." I didn't touch it. "You've been through a rough patch. We all have. Misunderstandings, hurt feelings. But I've been thinking, it's time to move forward. Family's more important than paperwork." I opened the envelope slowly. It was a formal document, estate transfer, full and irrevocable. My name wasn't on a single page. "You want me to sign this?" He nodded, hands clasped like a man at prayer. "So you can finalize the property under your name, make sure Chet inherits it?" Royce leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Why not? You don't even live here anymore." "You said yourself you're done with this place." "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant. Let's stop pretending." I set the papers down gently. "You already took me off the family photos. Now you want to wipe me out on paper too?" He frowned. "Photos?" I stood, walked over to the hallway, pointed. There, hanging between the thermostat and the light switch, was a brand new frame. Royce, Chet, and Jolene smiling in front of the Christmas tree. No me. My graduation picture was gone. The one with Mom standing behind me, hands on my shoulders, replaced with Chet's junior varsity football photo. I turned back toward him. "You've been rehearsing life without me for months. This isn't reconciliation. It's a cover-up." Jolene looked uncomfortable now. She busied herself with a dish rag. Royce stood, posture stiff. "Don't act like a victim," he snapped. "You walked away. You started this war." "No, I started drawing boundaries." "You're being dramatic." "I'm being careful." He raised his voice then, just a little, enough to let the mask crack. "You think this house belongs to you?" "I know what Mom wrote." Royce slammed a palm against the table. "She changed her mind." I didn't flinch. "No, you did." The silence that followed was thick, tense. I picked up the document and tucked it back into the envelope. "I'm not signing anything. Not without my lawyer, not without copies, and definitely not without acknowledging what this is." "And what's that?" An erasure. Royce's face went cold. You're lucky we're even giving you a chance to sign. You've caused more division in this family than you know. I think I know exactly how much. I walked out before he could say another word. Jolene muttered something as I passed her. I didn't bother to hear it. In my car, I sat for a while, holding the envelope like it was a bomb. Then the memories came, scrubbing those baseboards every spring, climbing onto the roof to help re-shingle, buying the washer and dryer when the old one gave out, all the things that didn't count because I never asked for credit. I was never family. I was labor. I texted Willa a picture of the document, followed by a one-line message. Start reviewing the title history. Within an hour, she sent back links. County property records, probate court schedules. I pulled out my mother's handwritten will, printed it. Then I opened a blank document and began typing. Notice of intent to dispute ownership transfer. My name, my contact, a brief timeline. And at the bottom, submitted under protest until rightful legal review. That night, I sat at the same kitchen table in my rental, staring at the screen. Then I opened another tab and began typing a letter, not legal this time, personal, public, to the church, the community, the friends who had quietly backed away. I didn't name names, but I named truths. I was raised to believe silence was strength, but I've learned that silence is a breeding ground for injustice. When people lie about you, erase you, and tell others to stop listening, speaking becomes survival. I'm no longer asking to be seen. I am showing up, documented, determined, and done with disappearing. I posted it, closed the browser, and didn't check to see who liked it. They thought silence was my surrender. They mistook stillness for obedience. The truth was, I had never been still. I had been calculating, listening, gathering. And now that I had what I needed, I moved like someone who no longer feared being called difficult or dramatic or disloyal. The call came from Valerie Simmons, an old neighbor, retired realtor, and someone I trusted more than I trusted most relatives at this point. I'm sorry to bring this to you like this, hun, she said softly. But your father's got a sign-up date for next Friday. He's listing the house. I blinked. What? I heard it through Ben's wife. She said her cousin's the listing agent. I don't think they know you're still involved legally. I thanked her, hung up, and didn't say another word until I was sitting in front of my laptop. They were really going to do it. Just like that. Sell the house I helped repair, maintain, clean, and bury my mother from. They weren't just trying to remove me, they were trying to profit from the erasure. I opened the scanned file of Mom's handwritten will, the one where she left everything to me. Not out of favoritism, but clarity. And she knew who held things together. Next, I composed 3 emails. The first went to the listing agent, short and direct. Please be advised the property at 176 Maple Ridge is under dispute and cannot be sold until verified through probate challenge. Enclosed is supporting documentation. Attached, copy of the handwritten will. The second went to the county clerk's office. Subject line, Notice of dispute, property transfer. I included a scanned affidavit, statement of intent, the digital audit I had been building, and a formal request to place a 30-day administrative hold. The third email went to Willa with the subject, Fireworks loading. By the end of the night, I had a plan, but I didn't stop there. The next morning, I printed everything, drove to a copy shop, had them spiral-bound with tabs, labeled Will, Bank, Fraud, Title. Then I drove to the house. I didn't knock. Chet opened the door, shirtless, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. He smirked when he saw me. Here to visit Dad? Or to pick another fight? I held up the envelope. Thick, stamped, notarized. This is for both of you. He took it, raising an eyebrow. What is it? A letter of apology? No. He opened the flap, pulled out the top sheet. I didn't wait to see his reaction. I was already turning back to my car. Inside that envelope was the original will. My statement of legal contest, copies of every repair bill in my name, and a typed letter that said one thing. I am no longer your wallet. I'm the witness. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Chet. "You're ruining everything." I didn't respond, I just took a screenshot. By evening, Willa texted me. "County froze the title transfer. Agent pulled the listing. They won't be able to touch the property until legal review." I sat in silence. Not relief, not celebration, just stillness. Then I remembered something. Mom, 2 years before she died, sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded. The heater had broken again, and water had leaked through the walls. She cried quietly, trying not to show it. I wrote a check that afternoon. Paid for the plumber, the heater, and 2 extra space heaters. No one asked me to. I just did it, because that's who I was to them. The roof? I paid for that the year Chet went between jobs. The basement wiring? Me again. "You gave your life to that house," Willa had said once, "and they just thought they'd write you out of the ending." It was after midnight when the messages started. Not from my family. From the neighbors. First, Marianne from 3 houses down. "We didn't know, Danica. I'm sorry, just saw your post." Then Gerald, the guy who used to borrow my shovel every February. "I saw the documents. Good for you." And then a message from someone I didn't know, but who had clearly been watching. "Thank you for speaking out. It helped me name what happened to my aunt. She went through the same thing." My post about financial abuse had started to circulate. It wasn't angry, it was factual, clean, unapologetic. It said, "When you grow up being told to keep the peace, you mistake silence for strength. But silence is the tool of those who steal. Speak, even if your voice shakes." For the first time, I felt heard, not loud, but clear. A few days later, the listing agent withdrew from the deal entirely. The county issued a 30-day hold. Royce received notice that the property couldn't be transferred. I didn't show up to gloat. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove to Maple Ridge just before sunset, parked on the street, stood at the edge of the driveway. I didn't walk up. I didn't ring the doorbell. I just stood there, keys in hand, not to go inside, but to remind myself I could. For the first time, I was choosing not to. That was power, and that was mine now. I didn't set the fire, they did. I just stopped pretending it wasn't burning. It started with a plain white envelope from the Office of Inspector General, tucked among the junk mail. The kind of envelope most folks toss without opening. But I read every word, twice. There was a flagged discrepancy tied to my name, something about housing credits and tax exemptions filed under an address I hadn't lived at in over a year. My name, my social security number, but not my signature. And just like that, the mask slipped. They hadn't just stolen from me, they were impersonating me on government records. It didn't take long to trace it. I remembered the folder Jolene helped organize for me after my hip surgery. I'd been groggy from anesthesia, unable to sit upright without assistance. Jolene had brought forms, said she'd help me take care of the boring stuff so I could rest. She'd even joked, "Don't worry, I won't turn you into a ghost on paper." Now I knew what she meant. I drove to her place, not the usual smile and wave visit, not with groceries or a plant for her patio. This time, I knocked like I had a court order in my purse. She opened the door in yoga pants and a hoodie, eyes tired, lips painted. She hesitated. "Hey, Danny, what's going on?" "You know why I'm here." She crossed her arms. "I really don't. The fake government claims housing and tax forms filed under my name at my dad's address." She blinked, said nothing. I stepped forward. "You helped him file them, while I was doped up on painkillers. Don't lie." She tried to play dumb. "I was just trying to help. Uncle Royce said it was a short-term thing. He said it was all legal, temporary. You wouldn't even notice." That line, it stuck to the roof of my mouth like something rotten. "You used me," I said, flat. "Not for help, not for kindness. You used me like I was a tool in the garage." Her eyes welled up. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "No," I said, voice steady. "You didn't care if you did or not. You're not sorry. You're just caught." I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I just drove away with my window rolled down, wind whipping through my hair like it could blow the betrayal off my skin. Back at the house, Maeve and Willa were waiting. We laid out every piece of evidence we had: printouts, spreadsheets, screenshots, timelines, medical bills, government records, copies of fake tax forms. It wasn't just one incident, it was a pattern, a system. 62 pages by the time we were done. They used you like a front, Maeve said, scanning the final stack. You were the financial face while they worked behind the scenes. They didn't just erase me, I replied. They turned me into a puppet, and they thought I'd never pull the strings back. The next phase came quickly. My phone began lighting up like fireworks. First, a voicemail from Aunt Carol. I know you're hurting, but is this really the path you want to take? Do you want to see your father dragged into court? Then a text from Chet. You're gonna burn the whole house down over a misunderstanding? Another call, this time from my cousin Pete. Is a house worth tearing the family apart? I blocked them all. Every one. I wasn't tearing the family apart. I was just refusing to be its floorboard. The following morning, I broke. Willa found me curled up on the living room rug, clutching Mom's scarf like it was an oxygen mask. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because I finally understood what had happened. And for how long. They used my name like it meant nothing, I whispered. Willa sat down beside me, gently untangling the scarf from my hands. So now, she said softly, you use it like it means everything. That afternoon, we mailed the packet, copies and originals, to the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General, a certified envelope with a return receipt. Then we filed a formal fraud complaint, followed by a whistleblower submission to the IRS. On the drive home, I called Royce. He answered on the third ring. His voice sounded like gravel and smoke. Danica, you should check your mailbox next week, I said. A pause. Why? Or don't. Let the government read it to you. I hung up. By the end of the week, the impact started to ripple. Royce got a notice from the state informing him of a pending investigation into identity theft and benefit fraud. His lawyer called him. He called Chet. Chet's unemployment benefits were frozen pending inquiry. He sent me 3 texts in a row, the last one reading, "You don't understand what you've done." I didn't respond. Jolene, meanwhile, was placed on administrative leave from the care facility she worked at. They cited ethical concerns pending legal review. She posted a vague status on social media about being blindsided by betrayal. I took a screenshot, filed it away. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no confetti, just a quiet moment at the kitchen table where I looked out the window, felt the sunlight warm my arms, and knew I had shifted something, permanently. Justice doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes with silence on the other end of a phone call. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and let myself feel tired. Not broken, just used up in a way that demanded rest. It wasn't over, but it was finally mine to finish. By the time Saturday morning rolled around, the nerves had mostly settled. Not because I wasn't afraid of what I was about to do, but because I had lived through worse. I had walked out of a house with burns on my chest and nobody bothering to follow me. There wasn't a sermon or sideways glance left that could sting harder than that. I pulled into the church parking lot 15 minutes before the community gratitude event began. It was something we used to attend as a family, back when I still thought we were one. I remembered Mom bringing store-bought casseroles and pretending they were homemade, Royce shaking hands like a mayor, Chet wandering late, smiling for photos, contributing absolutely nothing. I parked near the rear exit, close to the old oak tree where they used to set up folding chairs for potlucks. My palms were sweaty despite the cold. I adjusted my coat and picked up the manila folder sitting on the passenger seat. Inside were receipts, notarized documents, printed emails, and one handwritten will. I'd read every word a dozen times. They were no longer just pieces of paper. They were my proof, my defense, my truth. The sanctuary was warm, filled with the smell of stale coffee and powdered donuts. Familiar faces dotted the pews, some curious, some nervous, a few too polite to look me in the eye. I walked to the front and found Pastor Thomas near the podium. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Danica," he said, clearly surprised. "You're on the list to speak?" I nodded once. "I submitted a request on Tuesday. Got the confirmation Thursday morning. He hesitated, then gave a slight nod. All right, after Sister Wallace, you're next. I sat in the second row, hands resting on the folder in my lap. My breath was steady, but the air felt thick. 2 rows behind me, I could hear Royce's voice, low, gravelly. He was joking with someone, probably unaware that I was sitting this close. Chet's laugh followed. It sounded forced. Sister Wallace's speech ended with polite applause, and then Pastor Thomas called my name. I rose slowly, walked to the microphone, placed the folder on the lectern. My hands were steady now. Good morning, I said. I won't take much of your time. The room quieted. I was raised in this church, sat in those pews, sang in that choir. I was taught here that silence was grace, that keeping your mouth shut was the holy thing to do, that love meant endurance, and endurance meant keeping peace at any cost. Several heads nodded. Pastor Thomas folded his hands. But I've learned something else, that silence can be used to cover up things that deserve to be seen, that it can protect people who harm and isolate the ones who tell the truth. I opened the folder, pulled out a stapled packet. This is a list of every bill I paid for my father's house over the last 10 years. Water heaters, roof repair, property taxes. I paid them because I believed family meant sacrifice. I didn't ask for recognition. I didn't expect thanks. I flipped to the next set of pages. These are copies of financial documents, bank accounts, loan applications, even federal forms, signed using my name. Some while I was in the hospital, some while I was unconscious, all filed by my father, or with his encouragement. A gasp somewhere in the room. I turned a few more pages. And this, I said, holding it up, is the handwritten will my mother left. It was never filed, but it's real, dated, signed, and it states that the house I helped maintain for years was to go to me. I paused. Royce stood up from his seat in the back row. That's a lie. His voice cracked through the quiet like a whip. Chet shifted uncomfortably. I didn't flinch. It's not a lie, Dad. It's your version of truth that keeps changing. The one where I was never good enough, never useful enough, except when you needed a checkbook or a caretaker. A few people looked at each other, uncertain. Others leaned forward. I'm not here for pity, I continued. I'm not asking for sides. I'm asking for understanding. That when someone you know steps away from a family, it might not be because they're bitter. It might be because they finally found the courage to stop being erased. I closed the folder. And if you've believed things about me that don't match what I've said today, I hope this helps you reconsider. The room stayed quiet. Then slowly, applause began, scattered at first, then joined by more hands. Royce walked out. Not a word, just a stiff back and clenched fists. Chet stood to follow, but looked at me once before leaving. His face was pale. After the service, I sat on the bench outside. The air was crisp. It smelled like leaves and something ending. Maeve joined me, handed me a cup of hot cider from the fellowship hall. I took it with a nod. They didn't see it coming, she said. I wasn't sure I could do it, I admitted. You did. Later that evening, the messages started coming in. One from Chet's ex-girlfriend. I had no idea. I'm sorry. A text from Jolene's mother. I read your letter. You were right. And then the official ones. An email from the Office of Inspector General. Case escalated to formal review. Another from the IRS. Unusual filing activity under your SSN. Flag created. And finally, confirmation that the deed transfer had been legally frozen pending review. I drove to the courthouse that Thursday, Willa at my side, and handed over the last of the paperwork. The clerk took it, stamped the documents, and smiled politely. Welcome home, Miss Fay. I didn't cry, I didn't celebrate, but when I left, I didn't look back either. That weekend, I returned to the house, not to live, but to claim it, transform it. The old mailbox still had LeClaire scribbled on it. I unscrewed it, tossed it into the trash, and replaced it with one I'd brought with me, shiny, bold, already labeled, Fay Shelter for Women Erased by Family. The final nail in their version of history. The shelter opened on a Saturday. Not because it was symbolic, not because I wanted to make a statement, but because it rained. And somehow, that felt like the right beginning. I was up by 6, walking through the kitchen with a towel slung over one shoulder and a clipboard in hand. The fridge hummed steadily, the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and old floor wax, and the soft sound of rain tapping the windows felt like a quiet heartbeat inside a chest that had survived too many blows. There wasn't a ribbon cutting or a press release, no big speech, just a laminated sign by the door. Faye Shelter, for women erased by family. At 8:12 a.m., our first guest arrived. She wore a too large coat and sneakers held together with duct tape. She didn't say much, just stepped inside, eyes down, and whispered, "I just need a place where no one yells at me." I nodded. Same. We got her settled into the corner room, the one I used to sleep in after my surgery, the one with the yellow walls and the old bookshelf where my journals used to sit. By noon, 2 more women had arrived. One with a black eye, the other with nothing but a garbage bag filled with sweaters. I offered coffee, not pity. They took both. The house felt different now, lighter, like it had taken a breath and finally exhaled. That afternoon, I was restocking supplies in the hallway closet when I heard gravel shift in the driveway. Through the window, I saw them. Royce was using a cane. Chet was with him, wearing a jacket I recognized from years ago, one of the few things I ever bought him that he didn't pawn. They stood near the front gate, not moving, not calling out. I watched from behind the curtain for a full minute before walking out onto the porch. It was still raining, gently now, the kind of rain that made everything feel suspended in time. They didn't walk up to the door. They just stood at the edge of the property like kids who'd been told not to cross the line. Royce finally spoke. "You really turned our home into a shelter?" I walked down 2 steps, umbrella closed at my side. "It was never yours." Chet looked thinner, eyes dull. He didn't meet my gaze. Royce leaned on his cane like he was trying to look noble instead of frail. "Family forgives," he said, as if that settled everything. "No," I replied, voice quiet. "Family often demands forgiveness. Real forgiveness is optional." There was a beat of silence between us. Royce's expression shifted, confused, defensive, something I couldn't name. "You're really going to lock us out?" "I'm not locking you out," I said. "I'm finally keeping myself in." He stepped forward, barely. "This house, it meant something to your mother." "It still does," I said. "That's why I saved it from you." Chet looked up then, and for a second, I thought I saw regret. Or maybe just exhaustion. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You'll regret this," Royce muttered. "I already did. For years." Then I turned. Walked back up the steps, closed the door without slamming it. Inside, it was warm. Laughter drifted from the kitchen where the women were peeling potatoes, talking about movies they used to love. I stood in the hallway and let myself breathe. Later that evening, I found a letter in the mailbox. The handwriting was familiar. Jolene. The envelope was thick. Inside, a long, handwritten note. She said she was sorry, that she'd left her job at the care center, that she was volunteering now, trying to unlearn the loyalty that blinded her. I read it once, then slid it into the drawer next to my bed. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I didn't need to retaliate either. Some things just need to rest. A few days later, I received an invitation from the city, a community event on elder financial abuse. They wanted me to speak. I almost declined. Then I remembered how many times I had stayed silent out of habit, not healing. I said yes. Willa helped me prep. Maeve helped me rehearse. I spoke for 12 minutes, told the story plainly, without bitterness, without shame. I didn't use my father's name. I didn't need to. The women in the room knew the type. They'd lived with him too, in different zip codes, behind different smiles. The applause afterward wasn't loud, but it was long. When I got home that evening, the sun was setting behind the trees in the backyard. The porch light flickered on. I sat on the steps with a glass of lemonade. Inside, I could hear the dishwasher running, someone humming an old hymn off-key. Maeve stepped out and handed me a manila folder, case files for a new woman arriving the next day. Willa followed with another glass. I held it to my chest and looked at the mailbox across the yard. My name was still there, still bold, still mine. I'm not healed, I whispered, but I'm free. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a courtroom. It looks like a locked gate, a warm porch, and your own name on the mailbox. Maybe your story doesn't involve burning coffee or forged signatures, but if you've ever felt like your worth was measured by what you gave, not who you were, then you understand. The truth is, family isn't defined by blood, but by respect. Sometimes, choosing peace means choosing distance. What would you do if speaking up meant losing everyone, but staying silent meant losing yourself? If this story hit home, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true, raw family stories like this one.